You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. Bitcoin, Ether, Ripple, Litecoin, and more. Cryptocurrencies and other digital assets are taking the financial world by storm. This exploding market provides everything a savvy trader needs: volatility, volume, and liquidity. Provided you know how to find it. That's where we come in. Welcome to the Crypto Rundown. Each week, we'll break down the latest trading activity, trends, and developments on everything from coins to tokens, futures, and even OTC options. If it's moving the crypto markets, then you'll find it on the Crypto Rundown. This program is brought to you by Genesis Volatility, also known as GVol, home of institutional-grade crypto options analytics. Whether you're trading CeFi options or DeFi options, cryptocurrencies move. Use GVol Analytics to analyze implied volatility, model realized volatility, structure positions, and unlock alpha. For more information, visit gvol.io. That's GVOL.io. Now it's time to dive into the exploding world of cryptocurrencies and digital assets. It's time for the Crypto Rundown.
All right, everybody. That music means we are back once again to break down the wild world of crypto. Yes, it's time for the Crypto Rundown. My name, of course, Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as from the ever scintillating, ever insightful these days, Options Insider Radio Network. Reminding you, of course, if you like the Crypto Rundown, we love you all out there, but you're missing out on a whole bunch of other content. You're not listening to the full network. So wherever you're getting this fine show, make sure you upgrade to the full Options Insider Radio Network. It's going to get you nearly a dozen programs that'll keep you engaged with the world of options and derivatives. We also touch on crypto and a few other programs, most regularly on This Week in Futures Options, because, of course, CME has the futures and options on Bitcoin and ETH. So we get into it there. Of course, you have great reports for you there as well. And a lot of other great content you can check out. Of course, if you like what you hear, keep rating and reviewing. And of course, if that full network's worth of content isn't enough, you need more in your lives, including great pro Q&As. We got some great crypto ones coming up. We've got our buddy, Mr. Greg Magadini, the creator of GVol, now Amber Data. He's going to join us this week on Thursday, I believe, a little bit different pro Q&A day, to answer all of your crazy questions from the world of crypto. And I'm sure there are a lot of them, so it should be fun. Head on over there, theoptionsinsider.com/pro. is the place to go to join in on that session, participate in all future ones, and of course, get access to all the ones we've done there. Nearly 100 on that. That's crazy how many of those we've done. Plus, of course, Options Oddities every Friday, live access to this, everything else we do on the show, pro podcast feed. Great giveaways. Just gave away a pro trading crate just a few days ago out there. Theoptionsinsider.com/pro is the place to go for all that goodness. And let's see who's joining us today to break down all the madness in the world of crypto. Who else but our old friend, Mr. Bill Ulivieri, the principal over there at Cenacle Capital Management, a.k.a. the guy who's bridging the gap between traditional investments and digital assets, a.k.a. soon to be an author on bookshelves near you, if they still exist near you. Mr. Bill, welcome back to the Crypto Rundown, sir.
Mark, thank you for having me back. It's absolutely crazy what's going on these days.
It is. You picked a good one. You picked a good time to come back on, Mr. Bill. A little birdie told me you are in the middle of a crypto conference, sir. Where are you, and what's the lay of the land? What's going on out there? It's got to be a crazy time to be at a crypto event right now.
Well, it's going to be interesting because the conference starts at 2:00. It's sponsored by a cryptocurrency company, but the reason why I'm here is because of Rick Edelman, who is the founder and head of the Digital Asset Council for Financial Professionals, is going to be speaking. So it's a panel of 10 people. They're definitely going to be talking about the FTX issue, but they're also going to be talking about the institutional perspective of what's going on. And honestly, like my feet, I'm here in Chicago. I'm at a beautiful hotel. The city, I pretty much have all to myself. It still seems as though it's been abandoned down here, but it's still a beautiful day, and I'm looking forward to everything that's in store for the next 5 hours or so down here in Chicago.
It's getting a lot busier down here. You should have been here like 6 months ago or a year ago. Then it was truly a ghost town. These days, there actually is a bit of a commuter rush again. Restaurants are open again. It's starting to feel more like normal these days. There's actually traffic again, Bill, which I didn't miss that. I didn't miss the traffic, I should say. That was kind of nice. One of the few rays of light, silver linings of the pandemic. But I digress. Let's get on into it. A lot of news happened this week, listeners. It is time for the Bitcoin Breakdown.
It's time to explore the latest trending activity, trends, and developments across the world's leading crypto market. It's time for the Bitcoin Breakdown.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Bitcoin Breakdown, the portion of the show we break down all the action in the world's leading digital asset. Yes, we're talking about Bitcoin. And man, was there some action over the course of the past week. I'm going to wager there's quite a few new people maybe joining the show this week who have been just drawn into the world of crypto and volatility. Maybe they're shocked and dismayed by what they saw. Maybe they're seeing all this vol and movement. They wanted a little bit help breaking it all down. Either way, welcome here to the program this week because, yeah, it was a doozy over this past week. I'll just set the table for you listeners. See what we've seen over the past week. Pretty much ever since we turned off the mics on our last show last week, the crypto market just went haywire. It all just fell out of bed. At the end of our last show, we were at 20,857. That seems like such a distant memory now because coming at the start of today's show, we were at 16,478, down nearly 4,400 handles just since our last show, listeners. And of course, that wasn't the worst of the bleeding. We got down into the 15,000 handle. We got 15,710. That was pretty much immediately after all this madness because it started popping off, of course, last Tuesday. And then the low came on Wednesday, 15,710. So we have resisted breaking through that again, but still just intriguing times out there, listeners. Of course, if you've been living under a rock, perhaps you missed the news that FTX, one of the bigger players in crypto, a new addition kind of really coming on the scene in the last few years, making a big splash. No small part of that due to the fact that they were spending a lot of marketing dollars around the space. They had licensing rights. They had made acquisitions. Remember our old friends LedgerX, one of the few approved and regulated U.S. crypto venues, was acquired by FTX. They're now FTX U.S. derivatives. Where they shake out now and all this bankruptcy fallout, I don't know. But obviously, there were reports pretty much right before our show, actually over the weekend last week, questioning the solvency effectively of FTX. They, of course, had a hedge fund that the CEO also owns, which, again, just kind of shows you how much of this space is still the Wild West. For everyone out there who says we don't need regulation and DeFi will solve all this, there's still a lot of shady actors out there that I think the regulators could just simple things like reserves, all these things that are very beneficial in these types of environments. Maybe the CEO shouldn't also be running a hedge fund of an exchange. These basic safeguards shouldn't touch customer money. All these things that we've come to expect from traditional financial services are still just vague concepts in the world of crypto out there. And so we saw that as a result, of course, the hedge fund. They also had their proprietary FTT token, and there were some shades of the Luna debacle as well as this proprietary FTT token just cratered on rumors that they weren't solvent. Then, of course, Binance adding some fuel to the fire saying, hey, we're going to liquidate all of our FTT. They actually got it off for $22, I believe, and that was kind of the top from there that just started a panic, just flight for the exits there for FTT. Turned out a lot of FTX's books were predicated around the value of FTT as collateral for a lot of their assets, a lot of their loans. And of course, their trading arm also owned quite a bunch of it, as well as Solana. and it kind of dragged them all down. And the implosion was rapid. Within 24 to 48 hours, they were talking about bankruptcy. There was, of course, a rescue deal brokered initially with Binance that fell apart once they saw the books. They said, this is a disaster. We can't do this. And so that kind of just added fuel to the fire. And that, of course, sucked all of the major cryptocurrencies with it. There was a run on FTX. At one point, it was down to one. There was one Bitcoin left on FTX. Everyone had pulled all of their assets off of the exchange. So a long way around to saying there was a lot of drama since our last show, listeners. Let's start there, Bill, before I break down all of the vol numbers and anything else. Walk us through what this last week has been like and your thoughts on this just epic implosion of yet another major crypto player, this time FTX.
Right. Listen, Mark, I've got mixed feelings. On one hand, I definitely embrace the regulation, in the cryptocurrency space. But at the same time, you and I have been around long enough to know that we had John Corzine from MF Global, Jeff Skilling from Enron, the guys from Black-Scholes and Merton Option Modeling with Long-Term Capital Management, Angelo Mozzillo from Countrywide Mortgage, Charles Keating from the Savings and Loan Crisis in the 80s, Dave Kamansky from Merrill Lynch, Jimmy Kane from Bear Stearns, Theranos, there's more than one implosion going back over 40 years that we've been in this business. And so there's no guarantee that whether you're regulated or unregulated, that somehow, you can keep virtuous people from, people who are not virtuous from doing the wrong thing, right? So we still need to bring integrity and honesty and virtue to our global system, right? And this makes me sick. I'm dumbfounded. I'm shell-shocked. I'm so disappointed in the whole space. At the same time, I still look forward to the future of what could be decentralized finance. The fact that, so many big players like BlackRock and JP Morgan and the big firms are embracing, blockchain. And and that's why I'm here at this Council for Financial Professionals. I mean, this is the next new asset class. So, I'm sick to death about this whole thing, honestly. This is just part of the bear market. And listen, the last time I was on the show a month ago, right, maybe 2.5 weeks ago, I obviously called the crypto winter is over way too premature. So,
famous last words on that one, sir.
Famous last word, right? So I am humbled, as I often am as a former floor trader going back, to the 80s. I am often quite humbled by some of my spectacular calls, both to the upside and to the epic downside.
I think we were all rooting for you on that one. We wanted you to be right, sir. So alas, all your models didn't take into account the shady actors still floating around out there. And it's kind of interesting. It does seem like this event has really just made people more strident on both sides of the debate. The people who are hardcore ride or die DeFi folks, DeFi will solve all problems of the world. The fact that this was a centralized, quote unquote, entity that had one guy with his fingers in the till, that's what caused all those problems. You get rid of that guy, that centralization, that's going to solve everything. The other camp also more strident, saying, look, see, no regulation, that's the problem. People had to have oversight. We need to know they weren't messing with customer funds. Now, obviously, regulation is not a panacea either. MF Global was regulated. All these other things were regulated. Didn't catch the shady business going on. But still, it does seem, Bill, like the two camps are entrenching even further as a result of this debacle. Do you agree?
I mean, well, I totally agree. But, correct me if I'm wrong, Mark. I mean, yes, investors, I hate to say investors lost money. Yes, investors did lose money and speculators lost money. But in the big picture, are any taxpayer funds going to be used to offset the losses at FTX or FTT? I mean, that's kind of part of the beautiful thing of not being regulated. And I say that, a little tongue in cheek and a little bit straight up. And that is, we're not going to go to the Federal Reserve to bail out, Sam Bankman-Fried, and we're not going to be dropping interest rates in order to fund liquidity to, FTX and these other cryptocurrency tokens. So on one hand, it's kind of like the beauty of DeFi and the beauty of the space is that we're not really tapping into the coffers at the Federal Reserve or the U.S. Treasury to fund these bad mistakes. Like there's no crypto project too big to fail. So I don't know. I'm kind of going back and forth depending on what day you catch me.
Yes, not quite big enough, or too big, I should say, to fail. Not quite at that level yet. So I guess we all dodged the bullet. They're obviously the folks who had their assets at FTX. That's a rough show out there. A lot of people are arguing on both sides of the fence right now, Bill. Don't keep your assets on exchange. Keep them in some sort of cold wallet. Is that where you hang out these days?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that I've got a brand new, not a brand new, but a renewed appreciation for the self-custody of cryptocurrency assets, not just leaving them on an exchange where anything can happen. And honestly, if you would have said, 6 months ago or a year ago, what would be happening now with FTX, you would say there's just no way. I mean, they're like the next new Chicago mercantile of cryptocurrency exchanges. Like, nobody, I think, ever saw this one coming. This is truly, a bullet that hit us from out of left field. So, yeah, you definitely got to keep, self-custody assets, and, don't keep on an exchange or anywhere that you can, that amount of money that you can afford to lose, like 100%.
How crazy is that? You say that out loud too. That also shows how much of the Wild West we're still in. No one says, hey, don't keep your Apple at your broker. Don't keep your shares of Apple at TD Ameritrade. That no one ever says that. Yeah. But it's just everyone across the board, whether you're interregulated, whether you're strict into DeFi, everyone's saying don't keep your assets on exchange these days, which has its own risks, obviously, Bill. Because obviously you hear the horror stories of everyone offloads it to their thumb drive and then they throw it away and there goes 100 million worth of Bitcoin and they're digging through the landfill, right? So there's risks inherent in that as well. There's no panacea, unfortunately, there either. But yeah, these are crazy times we're all living in. Luckily, listeners, we get to do it together here on the show. Let's get on out some of the vol impacts and skew impacts we're seeing out there. And as you might imagine, they were pretty substantial. We were saying for a while, crypto vol, Bitcoin vol in particular, has just been languishing ever since the big sell-off back in June. We saw an aggressive spike. Then it's kind of been slowly drifting down pretty much ever since. The skew got very big to the negative. Then that slowly drifted down as well. Well, it all reset after this whole FTX fiasco over the course of the past week. The vol jumped from about a 53.5 on our last show, listeners, to about an 80 right now, 80.1 when we kicked off the show. So that's a pretty huge move in Bitcoin volatility. That puts it up there among some of the more volatile assets out there. You see nat gas hanging around at a triple digit level. Even obviously broad equity vol much lower than that right now. VIX in the low 20s. So that gives you some frame of reference for where Bitcoin is hanging out right now. Pretty rarefied air. The 30-20 skew out there in Bitcoin obviously going to get a little bit more negative over the course of the past week. And that's pretty much what we saw. It was hanging out close to flat on our last show, about almost a -1, about -0.75. So slightly skewed towards the puts, but not much. Coming into this show, nearly -11, 10.75. So it's jumped exactly 10 points to the dark side out there. So obviously showing a lot of interest, a lot of concern to the downside these days. And who can blame them? That's where all the panic was out there. So a huge swing from a vol perspective, a huge swing from a skew perspective. You got to go back to really June to see big moves like that in Bitcoin's recent history. In terms of OI, what's lining up out there on the Deribit front right now? And we're seeing numbers pretty close to what they were this time last week, which is kind of interesting. The call's at about 185,000 contracts open right now. It's up about 10,000. The puts, 105,000 contracts open. That's up 12,000 from this time last week. Let's get on into the size positions. What's open for size out there in Bitcoin options right now? Let's find out together, listeners, shall we? Top 5. Let's start at number 5. It's the 18,000 strike. That's got 12,400 contracts open. That's a newcomer to our top 5. So we're seeing a bit of a shakeup out here in the top positions in Bitcoin options as well. Number 4, still hanging out there, the 30,000 strike. That seems even more wildly optimistic than it did this time last week. 12,600 contracts open there. That's down about 200. Not a huge evolution. We fell so quickly, there wasn't really a lot of time to dump those positions. And now I guess folks are choosing not to make a lot of changes out there because the OI pretty much the same. Number 3, we have the 15,000 strike, 13,700 contracts open. That's also a newcomer to the top 5. So we have the 18 and 15,000 strikes breaking into the top 5 this week, which makes sense. We did sell off pretty sizably this week. And then number 2, back up to the 25,000 strikes, still hanging out there, 13,800 contracts. It's down a whopping 200. And then the number 1 size position in Bitcoin options still this week is the 20,000 strike. It's got 17,000 contracts open. That's down about 1,000 from this time last week. So some folks had time to bail out of the 20,000 strike, but looks like a lot of people, particularly for the upside positions, are not willing to or were unable to close positions out before we had this big down move out there. Mr. Bill, ain't that coming as a surprise to you? I'm sure the steepening of the skew and the increase in the vol doesn't, but any of the new positioning you're hearing out there resonate with you, sir?
Well, not really so much, and again, in the world of Bitcoin, but again, for me, Bitcoin and all cryptocurrency is a risk-on asset class. So I get some of the color of Bitcoin when I look at what's going on in the VIX, when I get to see what's going on with skew, the CBOE index, with the Merrill Lynch bond VIX, the ML move. And all of them, I mean, we've seen the VIX drop from 32 or 33 down to like 23, and it hardly even upticked. We see the same thing with interest rates, the fixed income volatility, same thing, a huge crushing. And so what I just really find interesting, Mark, again, is I think the CBOE skew, and I'm looking at a chart here going back to 2009, and that is, it's on the low end of the flat range. Like it doesn't get much flatter than it does right now. So I'm just really interested to see how this might transpose over into the crypto side, especially on the Bitcoin side, especially with this FTX stuff, because again, our markets kind of hit their low in technology and the NASDAQ and QQQ back in June and July, as did crypto. But now we have this new play, this new drama going on where we don't have it in the traditional investment side. So for me, I'm really keeping again, like I said last time we chatted, I'm really keeping a close eye on the US dollar, what's going on over there, fixed income, and how this influences the ship. Is it true that that rising tides raise all ships? And so I'm kind of keeping an eye on that over there. But again, just crazy things going on in this crypto space.
And you're right. It couldn't have been more of a stark contrast where on, Tuesday and into Wednesday, we saw all this just dire hand wringing. It was really the worst of times in crypto. It was starting to drag down the broad equity markets. We broke down below 3,700 in the S&P. And then fast forward, not even 24 hours, Bill, and we saw those inflation numbers coming out. And all of a sudden, the market, it seemed like what a psychological shift we had in the broad market from the world was ending in crypto. It was sucking everything down with it to, oh, wait, there's a small glimmer of light, but there's some. And the markets just seized on that like it was just a hand from heaven reaching down and plucking them from the depths, because we saw the mother of all rallies, NASDAQ up nearly 7%. What a huge sea change that was in 24 hours, Bill. Right.
This was like a year of extremes, Mark. I mean, think about it. We have just in the last 7 days, we have like Solana down 59%, Republic token down 40%, Synthetics down 39%, Zilliqa, one of my old-time favorites, 37.5%. And then we have the S&P, the NASDAQ up like 8.5%. We have interest rates are still up. The indexes are still up like 130% on the year. 10-year treasuries, the index is up like 150% in 2022. Same with the 30-year. Other than like energy, natural gas, and crude oil, like what else is up anywhere? Is it fixed income? No. Is it equities? Heck no. So this has been, is it crypto? Absolutely not. I mean, the sea of blood I'm looking at here at my composite strain is just, these tokens are down between 95% and 25%. Dogecoin might be the best performer out there, which just kills me.
Go Doge, baby. Got it. Go big or go Doge. Still holding on to its spot there in the top 10. I was looking at the numbers while you were talking and how high the vol got last week. And in that front contract, listeners, so the contract that's expiring in the weeklies out here pretty soon. So it's a lot of gamma baked into that vol number, but still, it got up to nearly, not quite 150, 142 is how high our front month vol. Go a little bit farther out, an extra week to this contract expiring on the 25th. That got up to about a 120. So still epic levels and still getting into the triple digits. As I said, we're hanging out at about an 80 right now, listeners. So what a crazy week it has been. Speaking of crazy weeks, crunching the numbers out there, last Tuesday was pretty much the busiest day we've seen out there on Deribit from an options perspective since we've been crunching these numbers out here. 113,000 contracts going up on Deribit. That is a ton. That is quite a bit. So a very busy day last Tuesday as folks were just piling in to the Bitcoin options market out there. Let's see if things followed suit and followed pace really out there on CME. Let's go out to the big Bitcoin options. And first off, they're kicking off the week with a pretty robust fashion. Already 253 on the tape just today, including 123 of the 10,000 puts in January going up this morning, listeners. So 253, that's 10x what used to go up in a week. So the big Bitcoin options starting to come to life. Let's see what they put up last week. And last week looks like about nearly 1,700 contracts on the tape. So again, that's a heck of a lot of paper. The big dog last week, the 12,000 puts in December, doing 230 contracts. They traded pretty much all week long, 100 on Friday, 100 on Thursday, about 30 more on Wednesday. Again, all opening. So someone was piling into those 12,000 puts towards the latter portion of last week. And given some of the action we saw out there in Bitcoin, it's kind of hard to fault them. Let's see how the retail folks held up. Let's go out to the micro Bitcoin contract listeners. And again, you guys can see these reports for yourselves on the CME front, cmegroup.com/TWIFO. That is the name of our This Week in Futures options report. And from there, just select cryptocurrencies from that drop down, and you can see all this data for yourselves. And last week, a decent week for the micro Bitcoin options, nearly 2,000 contracts. But again, that's about as many as the big Bitcoin options, which are a 5x multiplier. So for whatever reason, the micro Bitcoin options not exactly lighting the world on fire. The big dog last week, 500 of the 18,000 puts in November, so they're expiring at the end of this month, went up. Those are clearly in the money right now. Let's see if this week has changed. And no, it's only 4 contracts have gone up today in the micro. So for whatever reason, funds are starting to discover the big Bitcoin options, and the retail folks, for whatever reason, still not sinking their teeth into the smaller ones. Let's get on out to Bito and see what you folks are sinking your teeth into out there. Bito, when we kicked off the show, was at about a 10 even. That's down nearly 3 handles, $2.90 from where it was this time last week. The vol also exploding out there, up to about a 91.70 when we kicked off the show. It's up 36.3 points from where it was this time last week. Let's look at some top positions out here. Let's do a quick top 5 in Bito as well. Number 5, 29,000 of the December 12 puts. Number 4, 35,000 of the Dece 11 puts. All these in the money now. These were looking pretty far out of the money last time we chatted, listeners. Number 3, we have 37,000 of the December 15 calls. Number 2, 38,000 of the Dece 10 puts. And rounding out the top spot in Bito options right now, 95,000 of the December 10 puts. This 10 strike has had a fascination for people for quite some time. It has been one of the sizable positions out here, and we have broken through it a couple of times over the course of this past week. In fact, I was trading some 1x2 put spreads out there in Bito last week, and it looked like they're lining up pretty attractively again. So it might be interesting time to revisit that as we go on to revisit the altcoin universe.
It's time to move beyond Bitcoin and find out what's moving the rest of the crypto marketplace. It's time to boldly venture into the altcoin universe.
All right, listeners, let's get to it. Let's get into the altcoin universe, a portion of the show where we explore everything going on outside of the big dog, which is Bitcoin, except for right now. And man, as Bill alluded to, a heck of a lot of shakeup out here in the altcoin universe this week. He was joking about Doge. Doge looking pretty robust right now, holding out at number 8. Spoilers, or Doge climbing the ranks out there. Why is that? Well, Solana has pretty much been kicked to the curb, listeners. We'll get to all that in a little bit. Let's break down the top 10 right now. Number 10, we've got Polygon holding out there at about 8 billion. So that's what it costs you to break into the top 10 right now, listeners. 8 billion, that gets you to Polygon. Number 9, we got Cardano, 11.2 billion. Number 8, good old Doge, 11.3. So just barely making its way to the number 8 spot. Number 7, XRP. That one also coming under some, shall we say, pressure. Down to another 26% out there in XRP. Worth about 17.3 billion in market cap right now. Number 6, Binance USD. They, of course, were wrapped up in all this drama with FTX this week out there in Binance. A 23.2 billion worth of market cap for Binance USD. Number 5, USD coin itself, 44.2 billion. Number 4, BNB. BNB still holding out at 44 billion. Number 3, it's Tether, 66 billion. Number 2, ETH, 150 billion. And rounding out the top 10 this week, Bitcoin, $317 billion out there. So yes, how the mighty have fallen. Let's get on out to ETH, listeners. ETH also sucked down in this FTX vortex that sucked down a lot of the crypto markets last week. When we kicked off the show, 1229 was where it was hanging out. That's a far cry from the 1605 it was at the end of our show last week, down 376 handles from where it was on our show last week. Of course, that's not the low. The low came last Wednesday, a little bit shy of 1,100, 1098. That's how far we got to the dark side, listeners. So it didn't quite break 1,000. I know some people were worried we might get down that far. We didn't quite get there, but still a lot of dark side out there on ETH this week. Mr. Bill, what's catching your eye out there in the land of ETH as it too is sucked down the big FTX drain, sir?
Yeah, you're right, Mark. I mean, it's true. The way these tokens have just gotten hit so hard. And the only thing I can think of is that, I mean, what has really changed with the value proposition of Bitcoin or Ethereum and the other tokens that you listed? I mean, deep down, the value prop is the same. What's happened is that we're seeing a liquidation. Maybe it's a liquidation of collateral by other people that had loans out against FTX tokens, or maybe it's FTX themselves, or maybe it's just sympathy, right? When the 80% of the market movement has to do with, of individual stock movement has to do with whether the market is, railing or declining. And I know it sounds kind of weird to say that, but, rather than being so name specific, we have to look at the sectors. We have to look at the market itself, right? And Ethereum has gotten its fair share of beat-ups. But again, I'm in the light of FTX, I'm almost nervous to say that Ethereum is a good buy down here, right? Because anything could happen. But yeah, it's the same thing, Mark. I mean, we're just seeing liquidation across the entire complex. And Ethereum is no different. And I still love the program. I love what they're trying to accomplish. And I think everybody who is listening to this program realizes and is hardcore about crypto as I am and you are.
There you go, listeners. If you're in there for the long haul, you like this, you think it's just a near-term liquidity crunch, maybe you think this is a buying opportunity. I know a lot of folks have been scooping up some ETH. Maybe you're one of them out there. Maybe you're saying, that's it, I'm done, too much drama. We had a poll. I'll have my producers grab our poll from last week, Bill, and put it in the notes here, because we had a poll about this exact subject. The results were kind of interesting. Let's get out now to the vol. And last week on the show, listeners, we had a little bit shy of a 77, about a 76, 75 out there. This week, just a tick under 100, 99 as we kicked off the show, listeners. So a heck of a difference a week makes out there on the ETH front. In terms of skew, as you might imagine, getting a little bit more negative. Last week, negative 0.4. This week, negative 12.4. So down 12 points. Bitcoin down 10 points. ETH skew down a whopping 12 points out there. So decidedly bearish, decidedly more action to the dark side, to the put side than there is to the call side out there this week. Listen, and again, not exactly surprising given the price action we've seen out there. OI-wise, what's open out there on Deribit right now? About a little over 3.5 million, about 3.53 million calls open. That's down about 50,000 from this time last week. And the puts managing to tick up finally. This is what it took to get puts to close within 4-1 versus the calls in ETH. It's something like this. The puts are at 1.1 million now. It's up about 108,000. So you're still at over 3-1 also for puts out there, but not quite the 4-1 it was not too long ago. And Mr. Bill, I mentioned that poll before I break down the top positions. I have the results of it here now. And we asked folks last week, this was just a flash poll, so just a quick poll out there. But we asked you just in the middle of all this madness. I think this was on Wednesday of last week, Wednesday into Thursday. So at the height of the madness, we said the crypto markets are suffering from the fallout of the FTX Binance drama. Is this a buying opportunity or the start of another downturn? We gave them 4 choices, Bill. We said, are you buying Bitcoin here? Are you buying ETH here? Are you buying Solana here? Or are you just out? Too much drama. And Mr. Bill, guess which one they chose by not a full majority, but pretty darn close.
I'll take a final answer.
Not buying Bitcoin. They're not buying ETH. They're not buying Solana. 47.2% said they're out. Too much drama, Bill. They're just washing. Believe that. They're just washing their hands of crypto.
Fake polls.
Lies, damn lies, and statistics, right? 19.4% said they're buying Bitcoin. 16.7%, a tie for third, saying they're buying ETH and Solana there. So, yeah, that was kind of surprising. Again, that was kind of a quick poll. I wonder if we did that again and ran it for a longer period, if the results would be different. But fascinating stuff nonetheless. let's get on out to the size positions out here in ETH right now. And ETH size positions have always been, shall we say, a little bit more optimistic, a little bit farther out of the money than Bitcoin. That remains the case this week, which is interesting. Number 5, we have the 1600 strike, 199,000 contracts open there. That's down 25,000. Number 4, we have the 1800 strike. That's got 223,000 contracts open. That's down about 1,000. So those two are at least within striking distance. And then we kind of just go away from their lists. Number 3, we have the 3,500 strike, 290,000 contracts open. That's actually up 2,000 on the week. So some folks were repositioning on the 3,500 this week. Number 2, we have the 4,000 strike with 330,000 contracts open. That's down 2,000. And number 1 still, the size position in ETH options, the 3,000 strike. This has been just the number 1 position in ETH options for quite some time, particularly out in D. Seemed like the D's 3,000 strike, very popular. 401,000 contracts open. That's only down 4,000. So there wasn't a lot of time if you wanted to bail. Certainly not going to get a lot for the 3,000s at this point, if that was your inclination anyway, but intriguing stuff nonetheless. Volume wise, this past week, also a banger. Tuesday, the 8th, was kind of just setting records across the board from volume, and that was the case in ETH as well. Previously, the most active day we've seen a couple of records just in the last couple of months. We previously had seen a record the day after the merge in September, 743,000 contracts. We beat that last week or 2 weeks ago, really, with 797,000 contracts on the 26th of October. And then this past week, we beat it again on November 8th, so Tuesday, 1.2 million contracts changing hands in Deribit in ETH options out there. So that's quite the active day, listeners. Let's see if that kept pace out there on the CME front. And the answer is kind of. We actually saw some paper in the big ETH options, which is, again, that's a 50x multiplier. They just launched, so they're still looking to grow some volume. And they did 320 contracts last week. So it takes an apocalyptic week, I guess, to draft some paper. But we got some paper out there. This week, not a ton. Let's see if the micro ETH can find some love. And this product has had a little bit more success capturing your attention out there. Listen, that last week, that appears to be the case again. 10,172 of the micro Ether options going up last week. The big dog looks like nearly 1,000 of the 14 half puts in December going up. Actually, take it back. The big dog was the D's 1,100 calls. 2,410 of those went up last week. Pretty much all of that on Wednesday and Thursday, and all of that opening. So 1,100 calls. Interesting stuff. I would not have guessed that. That's why we look at the numbers, right, listeners? Mr. Bill, anything else catching your eye out there in the land of ETH before we roll on to everyone's new favorite, Solana, sir?
Again, Ethereum is kind of like the Ford F-150. It just keeps on going. And right now, I've got nothing really in the world of ETH that I'm focusing on, other than I had just heard. I didn't get a chance to follow up on it, but Vitalik Buterin apparently came out with another timeline of other upgrades and changes he sees with Ethereum. But the truth is, it took many, many years to get the merge going. I can't imagine that they're ready for another upgrade, although this one seemed to be pretty successful, Mark, and it's going to be a good platform for people. I like where it's going, slow and steady.
Well, I don't think you like where Solana is going. I don't think anyone likes where Solana is going right now. I was saying for a long time on the show, listeners, Solana seemed like it had a nice support around the 30 handle. Whenever it got down to 30, it bounced up. This is in the last few months, obviously. Going back longer term, a little bit different. But in the last 3 or 4 months, it seemed like 30 was a pretty reasonable support. We dipped below it a few times, but always rallied right back up. And this past week was what broke that 30 support and then some. Solana 32.64 on our last show, 13.94 when we kicked off the show today. That's down nearly 19 handles from this time last week. Why is they just taking the legs out from Solana? Well, Solana and FTX, unfortunately, were joined at the hip there. Of course, that SBF guy, very much part of the Solana ecosystem. They helped create the central limit order book functionality and a lot of that other stuff. That's been kind of a fundamental underpinning of a lot of what's going on in Solana. A lot of that coming as a result of FTX, and they had their fingers in it. And of course, that fund, that Alameda Research, also had a bunch of Solana, which is of course now being liquidated. So that combo, that lack of faith in it, and just the fear, and of course the liquidation, all of that really conspiring to hit Solana very hard. FTT obviously got it the worst, but Solana probably number 2 in terms of things that are in the crosshairs as a result of this FTX fiasco. And as a result, we're seeing just ridiculous numbers out here. The vol on our last show already frothy at a 96. Coming into today's show, 271. And you could argue that's cheap because look how much this thing has moved just over the course of the past week. Skew-wise, again, just apocalyptic numbers. Last week, we were hanging out at about a positive 2. Right now, negative 42. That's pretty dire, listeners out there. Bill, what are your thoughts on just the epic unwinding that is going on out there in Solana right now, sir?
Well, I'm looking at a Solana chart right now, and I'm looking at the all-time high at roughly $247 a token. Now it's trading, 13 and 13.8. The low, going back a couple of years ago was in, the 2.5 handle. So the question is, can it go down that low? Is Solana done for? I don't think so, but boy, oh boy, we're just seeing this rug pull from every single cryptocurrency out there. So I still have to believe that Solana, the idea is the number of transactions per second and the way that FTX combined with Solana and just like the whole infrastructure, the whole architecture of things is still that's still a viable thing, right? And so the question is Solana going to be the people that do it or not? I mean, it's just more sad news. And we just kind of broke our bullish trend line going back a number of years. So I got to keep my eyes on Solana here. But, the chart pattern doesn't look that good from a technical perspective.
It does not. And folks who study the data say there might be more liquidations coming on the Solana front. So it does seem like there's a lot of downward pressure out there on Solana right now. OI-wise, the calls, 478,000 calls open. That's down 92,000 from this time last week. And the puts, 483,000, up 22. So actually almost 1-to-1, almost exactly, about 5,000 contract difference between the calls and the puts. That's fascinating, just comparing it to other products. And also the fact that Solana was very put heavy, not a lot of calls. And then all of a sudden we saw the calls catching up recently. And now the puts and calls are back in 1-to-1 fashion. Let's go on out to the top positions in Solana, listeners. Got some newcomers breaking into the top 5, as you might imagine. And none of these strikes are even really remotely relevant anymore, which also shows just exactly how far Solana has fallen. Number 5, the 30 strike, 59,000 contracts open. That's a newcomer to the top 5. Number 4, the 25 strike, 68,000 contracts open there. Again, another newcomer to the top 5. Number 3, the 40 strike, 72,000 contracts open. That's down 24,000. Number 2, the 32 strike, 100,000 contracts open. That's down 45,000. And the number 1 size position in Solana options, 144,000 contracts open on the 34 strike. It's down about 15,000 contracts from this time last week. And you can see that a lot of that is just remnants of what we were talking about last week. None of those strikes are even within spitting distance anymore. And also, one of the challenges for this now is as Solana continues to lose value, the use case for options erodes. And all of a sudden, the underlying itself becomes an option. People will say, why do I need to load up on options on the 30 strike when I can just go buy the underlying itself if it starts continuing to drift lower, let alone if it gets down to those levels that Bill was talking about. In terms of records, though, we saw records for ETH and records for Bitcoin options, not so much Solana, which is interesting. And again, also kind of speaks to what I was saying before about as the price drops, it erodes some of the use case for options because only 444,000 contracts went up last Tuesday. That was an active day, but it's not even busier than the show before, the 26th of October, where we did 506,000 contracts. So it's an active day, certainly, but it's not a record by any means. So intriguing stuff. Let me run down. Oh, before I get to the rundown, before I get to the most prices, Bill, anything else catching your eye out there in the world of altcoin as everything is just getting sucked down the FTX drain, sir?
Well, the only thing, Mark, that I was looking at is sometimes, as a contrarian, I ask myself, what is going up when the markets are declining so bad? And there's one is Yearn Finance, YFII. I find that interesting that the fact that despite all this DeFi conversation, despite all these, really bad conversations going out there in the world of crypto, I think this thing, I'm pulling it up right now, but it's up 52% in the last 7 days, up 103% in the last 30 days. So if DeFi was really so dead, if this was the end of DeFi as we know it, I asked myself, why are some of these other decentralized finance platforms doing so well? I'm going to dig a little bit deeper into that. I don't have a pick of the day for you, but I just find it really interesting that I think this might actually be a great time to look for potential opportunity in the world of DeFi tokens. I mean, it might be worth looking at anyhow.
Yeah, find the survivors. Events like this have a way of culling the herd a bit, Bill. And so,
yeah, what you said, Mark, reminded me of something that we used to say back in 1987. Being in the OEX pit, we would look up at the screen and we would call it the put graveyard, this was in the summer of 1987 before the crash. Page after page after page of puts, all being worth like at a teeny, at a 16th. And they were expected to go out worthless when in fact they went deep into money by the time October rolled around. And you had just made a statement that Solana, some of these options, strike prices don't even matter anymore. Well, wow, you know what? You could say that for about virtually everything here in this space. And it just brings me back to those days where when there's no strikes that are relevant, like maybe that's an interesting turning point for the future. So it's like the ultimate contrarian play.
That it is. Let's get out some of these other altcoin listeners and we'll get out of here for this week. XRP, like I mentioned, coming under some fire. It's all getting sucked down the FTX drain this week, listeners. XRP 47.4 cents on our last show, 34.9 down, about 12.5 cents on the week, listeners. Doge, as Bill jokingly alluded to earlier, it was 11.5 cents on our last show, 8.5 cents this week. So moving in the wrong direction, but still, just by the fact that everything else got wiped out in the top 10, it has actually moved up in the market cap, which is always fascinating. Litecoin 68.37 last week, 56.38 this week, down about exactly 12 points on the week. Let's get out to Cardano really quickly. Last show 41.2 today, 32.6 down about 8.5. And Polkadot 7.37 last week, 5.76 this week, down about $1.61. And everyone's favorite Shiba looks like giving up yet another decimal point out there. So no Shiba Lambos, unfortunately, this week. All right, everybody. That music means we've come to the end of a wild and woolly episode of the Crypto Rundown. Hopefully, we've seen all of the fallout from this terrible FTX fiasco. The cynic in me, the realist in me, says we have not. There will be many more shoes to drop. We're already seeing other firms coming out and halting withdrawals, which is never a good sign. So, unfortunately, I think there are more shoes to drop, and we will be talking about this on the show for quite some time to come. But, Mr. Bill, let's leave them with something to look forward to, some optimism. Let's escape from this. You're at a big crypto event right now. Any fun analysis or trends or topics that you're looking forward to at the show today, sir?
Well, again, I'm very, very interested in how, just as we're moving into institutional adoption of cryptocurrency, how the conversation of what's happened in FTX is going to affect their perception and potential for invest. I don't think, listen, you and I are long-time guys here. We've been in this space for decades and decades, and we've seen this happen in a regulated space. And while there might be more caution on institutional investors, I mean, Fidelity coming up with their crypto exchange, BlackRock, it goes on and on and on. I just don't see this going away, Mark. And we're just going to have to live through another crypto winter, which is, who knows how long it's going to last. But I tell you, with these tokens down 95%, 85% from their all-time highs, it doesn't take a lot of capital or speculation money to, take a shot on some of these, some of your favorite projects. And I'm not giving up. I'm staying with this ship. And I'm looking forward to see how other financial professionals, whether it's financial planners, institutional investors, CFPs, how do they approach cryptocurrencies and what do they need in order to make them feel comfortable about investing in the space? And that's what I'm looking to walk away with here.
In the meantime, Bill, in between episodes of the show, if folks want to reach out to you, see what you have cooking, where should they go? What should they do?
Yes, they can visit us at CenacleCapital.com. That's CENACLE, CenacleCapital.com. And I've been a little bit slow on the Spotify podcast, The Blockchain Advisor, which is on Spotify, because I've been still, doing the proofreads and the double editing on the book that I hope to get out in about a month. So just they can reach out to us on Twitter at Cenacle Capital, or again, find us on Spotify for the Blockchain Advisor, and of course our website at CenacleCapital.com.
There you go. Check them out, CenacleCapital.com. You can also follow them on the old Twitters at Cenacle Capital, all one word over there. And of course, you know where to go to check out all the analytics we talked about on the show today and so much more. Genesis Volatility, aka gvol.io, is the place to go to kick the tires and light the fires. They're adding new wrinkles, new bells and whistles all the time. And as I mentioned, Mr. Greg, the CEO over there, will be joining us later this week to answer all of your many and varied crypto questions. I know you have them. I have them. You guys certainly do out there as well. Should be a fun pro Q&A session. If you haven't checked out the pro yet, theoptionsinsider.com/pro is the place to go to get access to that session, to be able to send in your questions and join live, all the other fun that we do over there. And then back for all the rest of our content throughout the week. And then back again next Monday, another episode of the Crypto Rundown. Stay safe out there, everybody.
This program is brought to you by Genesis Volatility, also known as GVol, home of institutional-grade crypto options analytics. Whether you're trading CeFi options or DeFi options, cryptocurrencies move. Use GVol Analytics to analyze implied volatility, model realized volatility, structure positions, and unlock alpha. For more information, visit gvol.io. That's GVOL.io. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.